Apple just released the new iPhone 16 Pro, and I'm updating from last year's model. They promise that there's many features that will help improve my mobile photography, but there's other features that they announced that left me scratching my head. As a photographer and videographer, I find that my phone is my most used piece of tech, more than my camera and more than my computer. I find that I'm responding to emails, checking off tasks, posting on social media, and responding to comments. But over the past few years, I find that I'm also getting hired to shoot many projects entirely on my phone. And because of this, I want to make sure that I'm bringing the best piece of gear to these shoots. So what's different on these iPhone 16s? Well, they're the largest phones that Apple has ever made. This is great for watching Netflix and YouTube and stuff on your phone and for editing photos, but I'm someone who prefers a smaller footprint of a phone, and I still kind of miss my iPhone 13 mini from a few years ago. But realistically, these phones feel pretty much the same weight, same size, and I don't think you're really gonna notice a difference other than your cases from your 15 aren't gonna fit on your 16. iPhones have looked pretty much the same for the past couple years. Last year, Apple added the action button, and this year they've added the camera control button. When I saw this on the Apple keynote announcing these phones, I was very intrigued with this button. I think adding anything to the outside of these phones is a big deal because over the past few years, Apple has actually been trying to remove as many ports and buttons as they can. So I find it interesting that the button they chose to add is specifically for photography. And I also find it interesting on the base model 16 and 16 Pluses, they also have this button. It's not reserved just for the Pro model phones. It's my job to take photos and videos, so in theory, the addition of an extra camera photo video button should be great, but I'm pretty interested with how the average consumer is going to perceive and actually use this camera control button. While watching the announcement of the camera control button on the keynote, I was asking myself why choose this low position on the phone. My thumb doesn't naturally go there, neither do any of my fingers, so why there? But after seeing that the iPhone 16s have rearranged where their camera placement is, specifically for spatial video capture, my mind immediately jumped at the conclusion that this button is meant to be used in horizontal orientation. But after having this phone in my hand for the past couple days, I can confirm that it is not that easy to use the capture button in vertical orientation or horizontal orientation. When you're holding the phone in one hand and trying to use the camera capture button with your thumb, it just feels too low. And if you're shooting horizontally, this button is actually too high. So I don't really know where this button should go. All I know is that it's not in a comfortable position, at least for my hand. But what does this button do, and should we even be using it? This button is pretty fun to use. Well, if you press the button when your phone is locked, the camera will pop up and you can snap a picture really quickly. Once your camera is open, if you lightly press on the button, you're given the option to slide between some camera settings, depending on what mode you're in. And if you want to switch between modes, you just lightly double press and you can swipe between those. The animations while using this and how smooth it is to switch between all of these is very pleasing. It's actually a lot of fun to play with. My experience with shooting photos and videos on my phone is to point your camera at your subject, maybe tap to focus, Apple's probably got it covered, maybe adjust exposure, and let computational photography do the rest. My point being that Apple has trained me not to adjust any settings on my phone. It's got it figured out. But by adding an entirely new button on the side of the phone to take more control over your camera seems a little counterintuitive to the direction that Apple has been going these past few years. Maybe this is a long game and this button is going to change and evolve and how we use our phones is going to be different moving forward. But I don't know, this button confuses me right now. Something I find interesting about the camera capture button is it is an actual button, but it's also kind of like a trackpad that it can feel sensitivity and pressure. So I don't know of many cases out there yet that have this special technology in them. Most cases are just gonna have a cutout for this button. A cutout doesn't really bother me, especially since I don't see myself using this button as much as I thought I initially would be. So there's a lot of great case options out there. Now that Apple has discontinued their leather phone cases and fine woven only stuck around for a season, there's only a few options to get a really nice leather case for your iPhone. Last year, I was lucky enough to try out Andar's Aspen leather phone case for my iPhone 15 Pro. And this year, I'm gonna be using their 16 Pro case on my new phone. What I like about this case is that it's full grain leather, so it's gonna look real classy and real sharp no matter where you're taking it. And it has MagSafe built in, which is a must for me. I love my MagSafe accessories. This is not sponsored. They did gift me this case, but I do really enjoy using it. If you're looking for a leather case for your new phone or a new wallet or other leather goods, check out Andar. I'll leave a link below. Let's talk cameras. Apple has increased the sensor size on the ultra-wide camera, which is exciting for me because that's probably the camera I use the most on this phone. Despite the larger sensor size, the photos from the iPhone 16 next to the iPhone 15 don't look drastically better or sharper or higher resolution to me. Maybe there's a little bit of improvement, but when you zoom in, it's not night and day different like I was hoping for. The telephoto lens on this phone is now a 5x, which is 120 millimeters, and it is no longer a 3x, which was 77 millimeters. Right off the bat, I'm already missing the 3x. I found that that is a nice focal length, especially for shooting portraits. It's pretty close to an 85. And I find I don't often use a 120 millimeter that often when I'm shooting photos. Maybe it's just familiarity of your tools, but I'll have to check back in and let you know if the 5x has grown on me. I think that the new photographic styles are a pretty big deal. We had these on our previous phones. They were called photographic styles and creative styles, and you've probably never touched them because they haven't been great. But now Apple has combined these two features into one. The easiest way to explain what these photographic styles are is that it's essentially just a preset for your photo. I love that Apple's given us way more choices for what filter we want to be putting on our photos. Some of them look pretty great and others still need some work, but you can customize any of these to your liking. I like that you can control the intensity of how much these filters is being applied to your images, as well as tone and color. However, I find that fine-tuning the tone and color can be a little bit tricky if you're trying to dial in an exact number. Or I just had too much coffee and my hands are too big. I'm curious if people are going to be using these and if they're as good as Apple say. Because if they are, maybe they will replace my Fuji X100 cameras. I've been hesitant to shoot RAW photos on my phone, basically since the feature was announced, because the file sizes are so large. This year, Apple included JPEG XL, which is a smaller file format when shooting in ProRAW Max. I've been trying to follow along on threads with people talking about this. I don't totally understand how this works, but from what I understand, it is a smaller file format that does not lose image quality. This feels like a fantastic upgrade, but at this point, I don't know enough about it, so I'll have to give you an update on that later. In terms of video, I was really hoping for some different format options for recording log in the native camera app. The log files that come out of that app are just way too big, and I find I never shoot in the native camera app. I've got to use Blackmagic or Kino or something else. With these phones, we can also shoot 120 frames a second in 4K, which is actually insane. The footage looks pretty good, but I don't know how often I'm going to be shooting in this frame rate. Once you've shot video at 120 frames per second, it's great that you can retime and change the speed of this afterwards. It would be nice if I could change the frame rates in 24 frames per second, because that's usually what I'm shooting in. And the files are smaller, but I can't have everything. However, the new microphones and audio mix feature may be the most standout feature of this phone. By using the new microphones and what I assume is AI and noise cancellation, Apple is really improving the audio that is coming directly from your phone. Right now, I'm in a room with a whole bunch of furniture and a rug, and it's not that echoey in here, and I've got a boom mic just out of frame. And now this is the audio coming directly out of my iPhone 16 Pro. I'm holding it at arm's length, and I'm using the ultra-wide camera on the back. And now this is the audio coming directly out of my iPhone 16 Pro. I'm holding it at arm's length, and I'm using the ultra-wide camera on the back. And just for comparison, this is now shot on the front-facing selfie camera. And just for comparison, this is now shot on the front-facing selfie camera. And just for comparison, this is now shot on the front-facing selfie camera. And just for comparison, this is now shot on the front-facing selfie camera. I do wish you could set studio or in-frame as one of your defaults. Otherwise, you have to go through each one of your videos and manually choose what kind of audio mix you want for them. So let me know, what do you think of this new audio mix feature? Is it game-changing? So am I glad that I upgraded from my 15 Pro to the 16 Pro? Initially, everything kind of feels pretty much the same on this phone as it did before. There are improvements, but they're so incremental that I'm really not noticing any difference right off the bat. I think if you're coming from an iPhone 11, 12, or 13, these phones are gonna feel like a massive upgrade. Over the past few years, Apple has improved so many of the features on these phones. Some of these features include larger screens, brighter screens, stronger screens, the dynamic island on every phone model, the action button, a better battery, faster charging, the ability to use eSIM, 5G connectivity, USB-C, higher base model storage, shooting in log, improved cameras, spatial video, shooting in HDR, better flash, portrait mode, newer chips, faster processing, Apple Intelligence, improved cameras, like the list goes on. Like, if you're coming from an older phone, you're gonna be really happy with your upgrade. But for someone like me, who's coming from the iPhone 15 Pro, who uses this a lot for photo and video, I don't know if the upgrade was necessarily worth it for me yet. Time will tell. Thanks for letting me spill the gravy, and we'll see you in the next one.